Welcome to the next task, task number 23. Here we are going to use the switch statement to design a simple calculator with basic operations. Okay. So this is pretty simple program where we are going to create an interface for the user where the user can enter two numbers and select an operation to be performed. And once these three things are done, your program should give you the result based on the operation selected. Okay, so let us begin. Now before I start, I will just like to show you. These are the operations that we have to implement. There is addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, and modulus. So these are the operations, and if you are familiar with the math library, then you can implement these two functions also. Okay, for the time being we are going to implement this only. The same concept can be extended for these additional parameters also, operations also. Okay, so this is how the program should look. There should be a title which says what this program is going to do. Then you should display a table of the operations that needs to be done. Then it should take the type of operation, then the two numbers, and then give you the answer. Okay, so let us begin coding this. Okay, so let us first start with the aim. Okay, so now we want to take two numbers from the user because all the operations that we are going to perform are going to be performed on two numbers, right? So we have to take two numbers from the user. So let us take them as float. Okay, float, let's say n1 comma n2, right? And the answer of the entire operation can be stored in another variable. Let's say it is answer. And finally I'm going to have the operations that we have to perform. Okay, now to perform the operation I can have I can use either integer. Okay, so let's say I use integer, and let me call it as operation. Okay, so if the operation, the value of the operation is 1, let's say we are going to do addition. If it's 2, we are going to do let's say subtraction. Then similarly we are going to do for the other numbers. Okay, so that is one way of doing it. Some other students may think in a slightly different form, like they would actually like to enter the operator itself rather than the numbers corresponding to them. Like for example, I may not want to enter 1 for addition. I may want to add the plus sign for the addition, right? In that case, plus cannot be stored in an integer data type, right? So for that I would be requiring a character data type. Okay, so this is the very important concept you should understand, that based on the type of operation that you're going to take from the user, you have to select the data type. Okay, so if you are going to select data type as numbers, sorry, operation as numbers, then you can select it as int. Okay, and if you're going to select it as characters like plus, minus, multiplication and these other symbols, then you should select it as character. Okay, and the best part is both will work with switch statement, because character will be converted to its appropriate ASCII value, because switch only works with integers, right? So while comparing it, the every character will be converted to its respective ASCII values. Okay, so both will work. Okay, now another thing to remember is float will not work in switch. So it is important to note that your operator should be stored in either character or in integer. Okay, so once the variables are set, now we can first tell the user what this program is going to do. Okay, so let us say we tell the user that it's a calculator, right? So basic calculator, right? And few slashes. So the next line will be to show the user what are the operations that are available in your calculator, right? So I will just list the operators. Okay, then I will do a /n, and then I will start with all the operations one by one. The first operation is going to be, let us say, if you have selected this integer, then it would be something like this: 1 for addition, right? And then the same line I'm going to copy and paste it a few more times. Okay, so 2 for subtraction, then 3 for division, 4 for multiplication, and 5 for modulus, right? So these are the operations that I'm going to perform. I would like them to be slightly towards the right. Okay, so I'm just adding a /t. Okay, now if I run this, this is how it looks, right? Now this is if your data type for the operator is integer, but we have selected it as character, right? So this will still work, but it would be more appropriate if I replace these with the appropriate symbols. Okay, so plus, minus, then division, then asterisk for multiplication, and modulus for modulus, percentage for modulus. Okay, and you can see your operations, list of operations with the appropriate characters for the for as the operators. Okay, now if by chance in your compiler, in your command line, if the percentage symbol does you are not able to see the percentage symbol, all you can do is you can simply add another percentage symbol over here to show this particular value. Okay, if it is not getting displayed. Okay, so you can see even if you add 2%, it still shows 1 only, right? So it is always better to show put 2% symbols, so that in some compilers, if single percentage is you are not able to see it, then also this will be escaped and only the second one will be shown. Okay, so it is always good to have 2% symbols for compatibility with other operating systems and other compilers. Okay, so once these things are done, next step is to get the tell the user to select the operation, right? So I will just add another /n over here, and then start with printf, and I will just ask the user to enter operator. Okay, so it is waiting for the user to enter the operator. Now I have to read the operation that is going to be entered by the user. Now for that, Since operator is a type character, so I will be having percentage %c over here, then ampersand sign, and then op. Okay, so that will store the operator. After that, I am going to tell the user to enter the two numbers on which the operation is to be performed, right? So scanf, so I can just copy this out, right, and paste it twice. So enter first number, and it is float, so I will use %f, and the variable is n1. Okay, right. Then in the second one also it is %f, and this is n2, and this is enter second number, right? So now our major part, that is to get the input from the user, is done. Now the only part left is to actually do the operation. Now to do that, the logic of the operation will change based on the operator, right? So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a switch statement with op as my variable in the switch. Then I will start the cases one by one. So the first case is going to be, now since it is going to compare a character, it is so it has to be checked with the character only, right? So I will just replace this by the plus sign. Okay, and always remember these single quotes is very important. That tells the compiler that it is a character. Okay, so I am going to check for the first case, that is plus, and after this case I am going to go for the second case. Now second case is going to be minus. Okay, now I have added two cases. In the first case, what I'm going to do is, since it is plus, I'm going to find the answer is equal to n1 plus n2. Okay, so that is my solution, right? And once this is done, I will simply do break, right, because I don't want it to perform subtraction again, right? Because if break is not there, then it will keep on doing all the operations till it reaches the end of the block. Okay, so it is very important to add break. Next case, I'm going to use the same logic and paste it over here. Instead of the plus sign, it will be minus sign. Okay, and similarly I'm going to finish the remaining. One of the rules of modulus is both the operators should be an integer type, and here we have selected both of them as float. Okay, so what we can do over here is we can just cast them both to integers so that the compiler doesn't give an error. Okay, so once that is done, then I can just do the modulus and store the answer inside this float variable. Okay, so once everything is done, I can just come down over here, printf, and I can simply say answer is equal to %f comma answer, right? So this I think this one is enough. Let's try to run this and find out if there is any error. Luckily there is no error. It is listing all the operations, and now I'm going to do addition first. Let's say first we do addition, 4 plus 5, and we get 9. Okay, so a very appropriate answer. Let's check for some other operator. Let's say we want to divide. Okay, let's say 9 divided by 3, you get answer as 3. Perfect. Okay, so now as a last we will also check for the last one. Let's say I want to select the modulus operation, right? And let's say I want to divide 7 by 2, I should get 1. Perfect. Okay, so our results are coming perfect, and we have successfully designed the program for basic calculations with the help of a switch statement. Okay, now there are two more things I would like to discuss before we finish up this task. The first thing is, if you want to add the other two, that is square root and power function, to this operations, so what all will be the changes? Okay, so the first change will be, you will have to add the math library over here as the header, right? Then here you can add two more entries for the operators. You can select any symbol you like for the power. Okay, so power, I would usually go for this symbol, uh, right? I can go for this symbol, right? Any symbol, it's up to you. Okay, so and for the square root, you can select some other, let's say you select an exclamation mark or something else, right? So you can select that. You then you come down and you have to add two more cases over here, one for the square root and one for the power, right? So based on what symbols you have selected, that symbols will come over here, and you have to just use the math library to find out the answer. Okay, so that is it for that. Now the second thing that I would like to show you is, what if the user enters something completely different? Okay, so these are the 5 operators that is allowed. What if the user enters, let's say, dollar sign? Okay, so it still runs, right? But it has nothing to do, right? So what I would suggest you to do is add a default case over here, right? And in the default, you can simply say printf and tell the user that your invalid right. So this you can do. Let's say I run it again, I enter dollar sign, I enter some values, it says invalid operation. Okay, now if you see, after running invalid operation, it still prints the answer, right? So that is wrong, right? So what I can do is, I can simply quit the application after this. So I can just say return 0, and now it will quit as right. So it is quitting at the right time, right? So this is perfect. But if you observe, after entering the operation, you know the operation is invalid, but still it is asking for the first and the second number. The reason is, it is not checking, it is not reaching the default case until you after, it is only reaching it after you're scanning the two statements, right? So actually, if you have understood, you could tackle it in a different way, that you could add an if condition over here too, right? So do that. I will simply start with an if statement over here and check for all the valid results, right? So I will just check if op is equal to plus, or I will just copy this thing and paste it over here few number of times. Okay, so it should be either plus or minus or division or multiplication or modulus, right? If it is equal to this, then obviously it should run. Okay, if any one of these is there, then it should run. But if it is not any of these, right, so I have to add a not over here. So I will just take this entire thing inside a bracket, right? So this is inside a bracket, and for to this I'm just going to add a not operation, right? So I'm just going to do a reverse of this, right? And if that is the case, then I should simply say invalid operation and do a return 0, right? So I will do this, copy from there, and if I try to run this now, okay, so if I add a dollar sign, enter, it says invalid operation, and if I use the plus sign, it works. Perfect. Okay, so I hope you understood this way of dealing the invalid characters. Okay, so both of them are correct, using default or using this if statement. Okay, but it completely depends on the preference. This looks much more correct than the default case. Okay, so once these things are done, I would like to discuss you one last thing, right? Before I close this out, right? So our till now our program looks very promising. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, instead of selecting the operator first, I'm going to take the input from the user first, right? So before the operator. Okay, let's suppose it depends on students to students, right? So one student may think, okay, let's take the input first, and another may think, let's select the operator first, right? So let's suppose one of the students did this, right? I just want to show you what is the problem with this statement. Okay, so whenever this happens, okay, let's try to run this. Okay, so when I run it, it asks for the first number. Instead of the operation, it is now asking for the number. Let's say I want to do addition, right? So I will do 3, then 4, and you can see what has happened, right? Now what has happened is, when you do this, okay, so what happens is, you ran this, the first line, enter first number 3, and after entering 3 you pressed your enter key, right? And then it came over here, it is asking for the second number at 4, and it asked for the number, you entered 4, and you after entering 4 you press the enter key, right? Now when the next scanf, right, for example, here the scanf is of type float, and here also the scanf is type float, but here if you look at it, the scanf is %c, right? So when you enter some value over here, right, for this particular scanf, the previous scanf, that is this scanf, right? So when you enter a number and you press enter, you are actually entering two things at the same time, right? So you are entering a number, and then you are also pressing an enter key, right? So when it is a scanf with a %f or a %d, then the enter key is not a valid number, right? So it is discarded, right? But since it is %c, then enter is also a valid ASCII character, right? So that gets stored over here, right? So that's why you in the output, if you look at it, this prompt did came, but nothing was seen over here, right? So that is the problem with using scanf with the character. Okay, now to tackle it, there is a simple hack. You just add a space in front of it, that's it. Okay, so whenever remember, this hack is very important to get the input properly, right? So whenever you have a character input, okay, whenever you do scanf with a character input, and before that scanf there is another scanf, then always remember to add a space in front of it. Okay, it's very very important, otherwise your program will not work. Okay, let's run it again and check if our program works. Okay, so let's add the first number, second number, 3 and 4. See, now it is waiting for the operation, right? So just by adding that space, our problem is solved. Let's do addition now. Press enter. It works, right? So this is how you have to tackle the problem of scanf when there is a character input. Okay, so I think you must have understood the use of the switch statement in the designing of the calculator. See you in the next task.